All right. Welcome to Resilient Voices and Beyond. It is a pleasure to be back and to have another episode for you guys. I hope you guys have been staying tuned and keeping up with the other episodes. I've had some great guests, and I have a great guest with me today. I have Jessica Ray. I call her Jessica. Yeah, no. But that is a joke that we have. She's a dear friend and a wonderful young lady. And without further ado, introduce yourself.
Hey, Mr. Eichel. I am Jessica Ray. I graduated with my bachelor's last year, and I'm currently working on my master's degree in social work. So I've been kind of working in the social work field not too very long, just maybe like I've been learning since 2017. I've been to a few field placements. I worked like jobs here and there. But this past year is like when I've started like really getting into my profession. I was originally from Illinois. I moved up to Bay City area in order to do my master's degree at SVSU. And I'm currently working at River Jordan Inc. as a life skills coordinator. And I am also working at the Bay City Rescue Mission as a life skills like coach person for the teens at the teen rescue shelter there. It's kind of similar, but that program is for 14 to 17-year-olds versus this one's 18 to 21 and foster youth. So they're very similar. So I can use my skills from one area for the other one. But that's where I am at this point.
Okay, all right. So I was like, you kind of gave me a lot of nuggets there, about yourself. And
anywhere you like me to expand.
Yes, yes, and about your journey. So I'm a big person. I like to dive deep, and to kind of explain for people, So reason, just to kind of explain to you guys that are listening, reason I invited Jessica because she's been on this journey of social work, and she's still in, believe it or not, after all this education, still in those beginning stages. So I wanted to kind of have someone that is working through the steps and doing what they have to do to get wherever that goal may lead, which she's going to talk about, because I'm going to ask her what her goal is a little bit later. But to get to those steps. So I think it's important for those people that are out here that are thinking about social work or don't really have a kind of thought process of what social work is, the stigmas and labels that are surrounded around it, and so forth. So I think it's important to be able to display and educate people in the process and who these people are. So with all that being said, why social work for you?
Well, I can go through the whole story if you want to, from beginning to why I chose it.
Yeah, if you want to, that'd be great.
Yeah. So I started my bachelor's degree in 2017. When I was choosing to go into college, I actually had in mind that I wanted to be a pastor for the Salvation Army. And I was going to use social work as like an add-on to that because it would give me some background information about the social services they provide. And then I would go into seminary school, which would be the pastoral portion of that. But when I went right before I went into college, I was in a relationship where it was emotionally and physically abusive. And so it kind of put me back a peg, and it made me feel like I was unworthy of a calling. And so I still went for social work. I knew I still wanted to go to college. And when I was like looking through the list of degrees, I'm like, this is the only one I really feel fit for. And throughout my schooling, like I fell back from wanting to do a pastoralship. But through the schooling, I found that I felt fit for it. So I would go to the classes, and I learned more about social work than I ever thought that it was about. So I didn't realize that social work was in the hospitals, it was in the nursing homes, it was resource connections for community services, it was therapy, it's all these different aspects. It's in the schools. I realized through schooling that I went to a social worker while I was in 5th grade. I didn't realize it at the time. It was just playing games and talking with someone, but I realized it was a social worker at that time. So it was a lot I was learning through schooling about myself and about what social work really is. And from that, I found that social work is based off of Christian foundations, of being the hands and feet of Christ and helping the community around us. And I felt that like that was a worthy calling in itself. And I coaxed up to the fact that I wanted to do social work and I wanted to try this out because it was scary and new to me. It was outside of my comfort zone. And I found that like I could be the hands and feet of Jesus, and I didn't have to be like, not everyone needs to be a pastor in order to promote the word of Christ or the love and peace of Christ. And throughout this journey, I also found healing in myself through the classes because I didn't realize the abuse that I did go through in the relationship that I had until I experienced some social work classes and it discussed that trauma. And I was like, oh, this actually happened to me. Because when you're in the moment, sometimes you don't realize it's happening and how much it really did affect you. And so from there, I thought about like maybe opening up my own private practice, or opening my own non-for-profit for sexual assault and domestic violence resource center. Because where I was in Illinois, we didn't have that. We didn't have a crisis center to call, or it wasn't like announced to the public. It was stigmatized. So we had to go to Planned Parenthood, which was even more stigmatized than calling a resource center. Does that make sense? Like,
Yep.
that was the resource that we had that was open, that everyone knew about, versus there might have been a crisis center, but it wasn't known to the public. It wasn't advocated for. So I was thinking of doing non-for-profit management to open up my own crisis resource center for domestic violence and sexual assault in the Illinois area. And so I minored in non-for-profit management as well in my bachelor's degree. So that was like one of the goals that I had in mind. But then working at the shelter and working with River Jordan, I realized that I do have a heart also for like homelessness and resource connections in that way, like making sure people are housed, clothed, fed. That's why I like part of the mission of the Salvation Army. Their motto is soup, soap, salvation. You start with the outward needs before you focus on the inward needs. Because if someone's hungry, if they're dirty, if they're like unsheltered, how are you able to focus on the inside if the outside or the physical needs aren't being taken care of first? So I enjoyed my work. I've worked with the Salvation Army before, and I enjoyed working on the social service side, and working with River Jordan and the shelter. I've really like opened up to the experience of what it's like on the other side and like how we can help those find the resources they need. But from here on out, my goals is just to find somewhere that feels suiting. I don't have dreams of grandeur right outside of college. I have a few loans to pay off, but I have dreams in the future, and I'm really just open to whatever God opens to me. That's really my whole goal in life.
Okay. I appreciate that. Um, it takes, it takes a bit of a sacrifice to be able to do social work. You know, and you talked about like calling and so forth. To me, certain people are called to social work, yeah, because I mean, a lot of people do it, and some people, I like to say the least, just do it for a job. They find themselves, they get to it, and it's like, okay, this is a job. It's not something I'm really passionate about. And I feel really sad that that happens, but that is a part of our system. That is a part of the brokenness that, people find themselves in a position where they're not really happy about, and that relays into their work. But it's really good to see someone as yourself that has put in the time, put in the effort, has worked with several different, organizations and so forth, and still find a passion and saying that my why is actually what matters to me, and this is what I feel like I'm really good at. And you can take something that was very personal to you and channel it into what you're doing. So I commend you for that. I know you're in the very early stages of what's there to come for Miss Jessica. uh, but I just want to say that I thank you for all that you're doing, and I know we work together. So you always hear me saying I thank you and I appreciate it, but I truly mean it because you've done a lot with River Jordan, and so forth, and working with, clients. And I've also, hear some of your stories with working with the shelter and stuff like that. So you've done a lot, and you you technically really don't have to. Like you don't have to. You don't have to dedicate your time and don't have to dedicate so much of yourself. But this is something that I see from you that you're passionate about, and you give it because you want to. So some say
Yeah, and
I
that's
for that.
yeah, and I do like work overtime sometimes with River Jordan, and sometimes I'm like, it's a super long day, but then like being able to meet with the clients and then having them like share their experience with me, or like them just wanting to sit and talk, like building that rapport, like, and then when I'm done, I'm like, that was worthy of my that was time well spent. Granted, it was long hours, it was tiring. I go home and I take a 30-minute nap and then I go right back to homework, but it's still a worthy like use of my time, and I enjoy what I do.
Okay. So I do have to ask. School is a lot. Nonetheless, having to do internships and working and all these different added things on top of like the whole of school. So we know in the world, not just in the foster care community, but in the world, there's a lot of stigma circling around mental health and just mental support and stuff like that. So as a student, and as a person, like how do you deal with your mental health? Or was there a time when you wasn't really dealing with it and you had to find the importance for yourself?
Yeah, that's what I ask every day. Mental health. while doing, I'm in an advanced standing program, so that means what should have been a 2-year program, like I would have started fall of like this year, and then I would have graduated the May of next year. What would have been a 2-year program, I started in May of 2021, and I'm going to graduate in May of 2022. So that's condensed like all of these classes into 4 semesters. And 2 of those semesters are only a month each. So that's like 13, 14 credit hours packed into a month. It and mental health and self-care during this time has been such a struggle. Like, I'm going to say this to everyone. If you see a social work student, ask if they want a hug, ask if they want to go out to coffee, because I will make time, but you have to force me to do it. Because I'm bad at making care time for myself. I work 9 to 5, Monday, Tuesday, sometimes Wednesdays, and then homework is extensive. And I'm probably doing 2 to 3 hours of homework per day. along with working on weekends. So I work 4 to midnight on the weekends as well, along with classes from 9 a.m. ish to 6 o'clock p.m. on Fridays, and sometimes a Saturday class. But some self care that I make sure I make time for is I go to church every Sunday, whether or not I'm feeling it, whether I'm tired or not. I make sure to include that in my life because that's something I don't want to give up. I have to schedule in a nap for myself, or else I'm not productive in the afternoons. There's no shame in a good nap, okay? But I have started making sure I reach out to people once in a while. I have friends in Illinois that I will talk online with at least once a week. And I have a coworker who I will visit on Wednesdays. When I'm doing homework, we'll go to Live Oak and we'll drink some coffee, we'll do homework, that sort of thing. And I have classmates on Fridays that I can vent with if I need to. So little pieces here and there. Should I be in therapy? Maybe. But some of that's just scheduling issues. Not that like I'm overly traumatized or anything, but it would be nice to like have someone to talk to at least once a week, like a scheduled time, to have that guidance throughout my transition. But I've talked to classmates and we all agree that we should have like a student mental health or / self-care class or seminar through the school that the school pays for, because man, it's needed. The student burnout is real in this last semester.
I feel that. That was a lot right there, a lot of nuggets in that too, so I hope, some of the listeners are able to take some of those tidbits or even just some of those, life lessons and experience, the reality is that taking care of your mental health does not look like what TV presents, what, the next person is doing. It's your own unique experience. And one thing I do want to say is I validate the importance of therapy and so forth. But some people that work different jobs and stuff like that, or maybe don't even have the insurance for therapy and so forth, it can be a struggle to try to schedule that in. I don't really think there's a supplement for therapy, but what you can do is try to take care of the small things, which kind of Jessica said, like, church is very important for her. That's a part of self-care. That's a part of dealing with her mental health, making sure she take those naps, making sure when, a friend does ask, to kind of check in and so forth, hey, you want to take a little minute to, go do something. She makes time for those things, and that's her little, believe it or not, that's her little bubble of taking care of herself. That's what works for her. She stresses the importance of there could be a little more that I do for myself, but with her scheduling for things, that's what she can do for herself. So I just want to stress to the listeners, young or old, or whichever, if you're still in that kind of predicament, trying to figure out, work with what you have, and then make a plan to try to get to the next step of what you want to be at with your mental health. It is very important. There's a lot of stigmas and different things that are surrounded around it, and different demographics and different communities too. So if you have never dealt with it, if you've never had the conversation about it, start that conversation in your household with your friends, even with yourself. It is very important, and you won't believe, how many people you're surrounded around that actually, go to therapy or, may have medication for like things like anxiety or depression and stuff like that. I'm a firm person and believing that it's time that we normalize, mental health and break down the stigmas and the labels surrounding around it. But thank you for sharing that piece of
Yeah,
yourself.
and I wanted to add in there, in the professional setting, like I know myself personally and like some other classmates had the feeling that like, well, I'm in a therapeutic situation where I'm serving as a therapist or I'm serving therapy techniques to clients, like, and it feels weird to request therapy when you are in that therapeutic position. But I'm here to say, like, everyone needs therapy. Like it's for everyone, whether you're a professional, whether you're like in a different situation, everyone can use therapy like to their benefit. And it shouldn't be just for like, oh, I'm not that type of person, that sort of thing. Like it's okay to need help. It's okay to not be okay. And um yeah, that's what I had.
Thank you. I want to kind of get into this next part. I have a couple more questions for you. Um, COVID has really, racked up the world. It has like tore it upside
what
down.
what's COVID? What is that a thing? Huh?
Man,
It is a thing.
so I kind of want to touch on that. What has been your experience as a student? Because you have been a student throughout this whole thing. So what has been your experience as a student, but also going into internships throughout this? What has been your experience? And how have you dealt, coped, and worked around it?
Yeah. So when COVID hit, I was in the spring semester of my junior year of my bachelor's degree, and we kind of got shipped back to our homes. And I was actually in Ireland when all the world shut down, and I had to escape Ireland. That's another story. But if you want to hear about that, I can tell you about that. But the focus is school. We got sent home, and we worked from home, and that didn't really affect my schooling too much. It just went online. It did affect like my mental health in that way, but I did work at the Salvation Army at that time during COVID, because they stayed open the entire time, serving meals every single day. They were serving about like 300 to 400 meals out their back door every day to go. I was doing rental assistance for the first part, but then there was like stipulation, so like they paused on asking for rent payments until later that year. So we were helping with the aftermath of that, and we were doing like emergency food pantry assistance, which usually was like every 3 months you could do emergency food pantry. But because of COVID, we had people coming in like weekly because they couldn't work, so they needed those groceries and assistance that SNAP couldn't always provide for. Like we had a baby pantry that had formula and such, and sometimes WIC would like run out with it before the end of the month. So I worked with them during that time, and it was just so interesting, like how resilient people are during that time. Like we still came in every day, and despite like the numbers rising or not, we still but we like practice safe distancing and all of that. And even the people who would come in to receive services, like no matter the state they were in, they were still willing to reach out for help. And we were doing food giveaways, and we had people who were like nurses and teachers who would come to the food line, and they're like, I've never had to do this before, but because of COVID, I haven't been able to work as much, or this person contacted COVID in my household, so we couldn't go grocery shopping. There was one day, like I was putting the food boxes from the giveaway into a car because we did it like a drive-through, and this woman just like started pouring tears because she never had to ask for services before, and it was just such an overwhelming experience for her. And she was just so thankful because it was a lot of things, but she was just so thankful because she said, I wouldn't make it through this pandemic if it were not for these food giveaways. So that was like such a moving time to experience. And then when it came to my internship for my senior year, we went back in person, but we did social distancing. If we came in contact with COVID, we had to quarantine for 2 weeks. But I never once came in contact with COVID. I never had COVID. But I had an internship with Catholic Charities in Illinois, and that was also like a rental assistance program. And once again, so this was the time when they started taking back the stipulations. So they were now requiring people to pay their rent. Well, you just told them that they didn't have to pay rent for 5-6 months. They haven't been able to go to work. They haven't been able to do these things because of COVID. Now it's February, March, and they have like $1,000 plus back rent because they couldn't work. So Catholic Charities had a program where they would pay a portion of the rent or all of the rent for 1 month or more. And they also had a program, they would pay the first month and rent and deposit for certain situations. So I was like the intake manager of that. So I would take in applications, I would review the information, and I would report it to my supervisor, and we would discuss if this was a case that would qualify, because you had to like show your pay stubs, show that you weren't able to work, show that you attempted to make payments, or that you would be able to make payments in the future if we did cover the entire month, that sort of thing. And there was a mixed batch there. There were some people who it looked like they took advantage of the situation and just didn't pay their rent despite like working. But there were others that like really couldn't work because of a physical disability, or a health issue so like if they had some health disparity that made them more susceptible to COVID, they could show that, or like a doctor's notice that said they couldn't work during COVID. There was a woman who was like working a waitress job, and because of COVID, she like had reduced hours, and she sorry, I'm trying to remember it properly, but she had reduced hours, so she wasn't able to pay her rent the full portion that she usually is able to because of the reduced hours. And she like called us, and we were like, this is this is clear that it was a COVID related case. And we were able to pay the full amount for her, and she was just astonished that it was able to happen. And she was okay from then forward, and I checked in with her a few months later, and she was just so thankful. But I think part of that is like you never know it's not them, it's not they're different than me, like that could be me, and I'm no different than them. So I want to extend a hand because they are people. They are human, like humanizing people versus saying that you're not working hard enough, you're not doing this and that to keep afloat. Like everyone is in their own different stage of life, and some people can handle more than others, and that's okay. But we all are in our own path, and it's okay to admit that sometimes we need help.
Well, thank you for that, Jessica. It was a lot, and it was very inspiring to see the decency of humans and so forth. COVID has kind of shined the light on the grace and the goodness that's within people, and that we all need people. It takes all of us to make this thing called life work, and I can even say there was a lot of people that I knew that was like, I don't need nobody, I'm good. I don't want it, that I see now after COVID. Not that they were bad people or anything like that. Not that they were bad people. They were just very self-serving, and independent to say the least. It has opened them up to realize that I don't like necessarily have to do this by myself. I have supports, I have resources, I have a community and so forth, and sadly we lost a lot of people in this nation and around the world due to COVID. Um, but the resiliency and perseverance that came out of it and that is happening right now because we're not over it, and I don't want to say the least, that we're over it. We've got over one hill, but there's many hills to climb with COVID. And as the news is saying, if you listen to that, COVID will be around probably for the rest of our lives. You know, um, we have to figure out how to continue living, how to continue taking care of our mental health, how to continue, with these protocols, wearing the mask, getting vaccinated if you need be, if you haven't been vaccinated, um, doing what we need to do for our community and for our families and so forth. So thank you for that. Um, Lastly, you know, uh, two more questions. Yeah,
Man, now you're just asking for everything.
but um, so for students, well, I'm gonna three more questions. So for students, what advice could you give for young professionals? What advice could you give? And hmm, you've worked with foster youth, so what advice could you give to some foster youth out there in the world today? Those
I'm
three
sorry. I'm sorry. Could you repeat that?
It's okay. It's
I
okay.
couldn't
So,
follow.
so for students, what advice could you give? Advice or tidbits, whichever. For professionals, young professionals, and so forth, what advice could you give? Tips or tidbits. And for foster youth or an alumni, what advice could you give?
Like advice in general or towards a certain subject?
Whichever. It doesn't have to be from
Okay.
a certain subject, whatever comes from your heart.
Okay. Put me on the spot. It's okay. To students, I would just say, yes, it's long days. It's long, draining hours. Some days you wake up in the morning and you're like, do I really want to do this? But I promise that even the little things you do is changing someone's life, even in the littlest bit, even if you don't see the results. Like I've had student, like I was a mentor to elementary school students in a social work position, and like 2 months after I had to terminate the position, I had one of the students like reach out to me via a letter, and I about teared up because she just all we did every day was just sit down, talk about her life, and maybe play a game or two. But she sent that letter and said she really enjoyed having that time with me, and I like to think that she carried that moment just to say, this person took the time to set aside time to talk with me, to make me like the center of their time during this portion of the day. So you may not see the results now, but sometimes it's just planting that seed of change in someone's life. So I just say, keep on going and like, don't get discouraged, even in the moments where it feels like nothing's changing, because what you're doing is important. I guess the same could go for professionals in that way. Like, um, it's pretty much pretty close to the same. Like, what you do is valid and it's crucial in this time of need. And sometimes it's just planting a seed in someone's life, even if we don't see the outcome of that change. And to foster kids, like, you are capable of doing more than what society says that who you are. Like, you are not defined by society's standards. You get to write your own narrative, your own story. Like, what happened in the past should be addressed, and you need to find your own healing. But there are resources out there for you for healing and for promoting your own future forward into life. Even I'm learning more and more about this through working with River Jordan. So me and you together, we can talk to Michael over here, figure out all these resources. But yeah, the sky's the limit.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Even though it was put on the spot, you said some very eloquent and good words there.
Why, thank you.
No.
Just pulled that one out of the resources of my mind, the back crevices of my mind.
Well, sometimes that is the best place. That is the best place. I just want to thank you guys for tuning in. This is a very special episode for me. I got to record with one of my coworkers and so forth. Keep me going, keep me, as you see, as we're laughing. This is not just on here, like we be laughing every time.
Are you sure about that, sir?
But we keep each other going, and I like to think. So it was very important to me to be able to share her story and share that with you guys that are in school that may have been struggling, and just need something to tell you that you're not the only one. So it was important to be able to share that, but also give you some tips and tidbits, for you to take along the way. I just want to thank you guys for tuning in. I want to thank you, Jessica, for being a guest.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
No problem. I would love to have you in the future, in whichever endeavor you choose to do, and just come back and tell us,
yeah, talk to me when I'm MSW.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to hold you to that. But thank you guys for tuning in to Resilient Voices and Beyond. I hope that you have a great day, great evening, great night. Whenever you're listening to this, I hope you just have a great something.
Have a good nap.
Right. And you guys stay safe out there. Please stay safe. Wear your mask, follow protocols, sanitize, but also wash your hands. Just do what you got to do to just make sure that you're safe and you're healthy. It's really bad out there. So this is Resilient Voices and Beyond. Have a great day.